Happy Monday, everyone. Hope you all had a great weekend. This is To The Point back here, and a lot to get into today on a Monday. It is Monday, October 3rd. We are now into October, if you can believe it. The NFL season is a quarter way done. My God. And the NHL season is 8 days away from starting. The NHL season, October 11th, a week from tomorrow, will start. The Major League Baseball postseason technically begins on Friday with the wild card games. NBA season starts in 2 weeks tomorrow. We are in the full swing of it. We are starting everything. It's going to be on at once. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of content, a lot to absorb, but I can do it. How do I do it? Well, I'm me, so it's hard. It's hard not being me. Just kidding. It's easy to not. I wish everybody did not be me in my brain. But when you have a lot of screens, when you don't have a whole lot, much of a social life, when you don't try to converse with a lot of people, you can absorb a lot of sports, oddly enough. I know that's hard to believe when you don't make an effort to really be a great friend or do anything else other than watch sports. You get to watch a lot of it because you're just sitting at home. The dog's forced to be with you, and you're there, you're watching games. And then all of a sudden, you're in the afternoon, you're watching Sabres-Panthers. Loving it. You and the other 4 people in the world are watching that afternoon game. But guess what? You enjoyed it. So that's all that really matters, right? But yeah, that's what's coming up. A lot of sports are starting in the next little while. And over the next week, we're doing some NHL preview shows with tomorrow when Seamus joins for his weekly hit. We will be previewing the Pacific Division. We'll talk about the Canadian teams in the Pacific. We'll talk about McDavid. We'll talk about the LA Kings, who I like, the Anaheim Ducks. We'll go through that division. Wednesday, I'll be doing the Metropolitan Division. So I'll be doing the Metropolitan Division on Wednesday, solo, and then Friday. This week, we're doing a little shift. Big Money Friday will be on Thursday. Matt Wright will join me. It's the only day he can do it, and I wanted to get him in on the podcast this week. So we're going to do it Thursday. We'll do that prior to the Thursday night games. So prior to Colts Broncos Thursday night, we will talk about that game. We'll talk about the spreads. Everything that you can bet on before Thursday night, we'll let you know. So be aware of that on Thursday. So Big Money Friday is on Thursday this week. And Friday, I'll be doing a podcast previewing the Central Division. So that's what is the plan right now, is that 3 divisional previews this week in the National Hockey League, full NFL slate. We'll get into baseball and all of that information with the wild cards. We'll preview those series as they fall out here, as teams clinch, as we get the schedule, things of that nature. We'll get into that this week as well. So lots happening. It's gonna be fun though. I'm looking forward to getting this going, to getting to everything going at once. You don't have to look at a commercial because you can just flick. I do that anyway. But for everybody out there that enjoys everything being on at once, it's gonna come at you in a wave here real soon. So that's what's on the docket for the next week for To The Point. Should be a lot of fun, a lot of great content. And I think it'll get you prepared for the NHL season. If you can't remember where did every player go, what teams do you think are going to be really good? Because I'll talk about each division. And then next week, top 10 players list, which is always full of controversy because I like my lists. I look at players differently than other people, which I love. And I usually anger people with my lists, which it's not my goal going into it. But if I do it, I don't get upset about it. So top 10 players next week. I'll talk about the 2 teams I see making the Stanley Cup final. We'll do that next week. That's sure to be wrong, but nevertheless, everybody else will be wrong too, but I'll admit it when I'm wrong in June. And yeah, we'll talk about the season as a whole. So that's what's coming up. A lot of content. Should be a lot of fun. Today's show. It's going to be an NFL day. It's a Monday. It's a big surprise coming from me. It's going to be an NFL show today. But a lot to talk about. A lot of interesting storylines from the NFL world yesterday. A lot of interesting games. I will dive into baseball briefly. Interesting series from over the weekend. And just a choke job from one particular team who's had so many opportunities to make the postseason, yet their failure and their inability to be clutch is going to keep them out, which is heartbreaking for that squad. But let's start with this general theory. Every week in the NFL, there's a narrative. There's an opinion, but there's an overwhelming opinion. There has to be, you have to put all your pieces together and say, this is what we learned from this week, or this is our narrative going into week 5. And normally it's, well, Aaron Rodgers is the MVP, or the Philadelphia Eagles are the best team in the NFL, which could be true. But to me, the narrative, the story after week 4 has stayed the same for a very long time. The storyline of this weekend, to me, is that Patrick Mahomes remains the best player, quarterback, however you want to phrase it, in the National Football League. I've heard about Josh Allen. I've heard about Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. You name a player, they've been put in the conversation with Patrick Mahomes Jr. III. That's all you hear is, oh, this guy's better. This guy's the best player in the NFL. Tom Brady was voted the best player in the NFL by the NFL Network. One of the dumbest polls I've seen. Nevertheless, Tom Brady's still a good player. He's not better than Patrick Mahomes right now. He's not better than Josh Allen right now. He's not better than Lamar Jackson right now. But I won't go on. But to me, it's a simple narrative that yet needs to be explained to people for some reason. Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the sport. Yet people don't comprehend it. They don't take that in. They try to come up with a different player. There's this Mahomes fatigue. There's a Mahomes hatred. I'm going to throw that in there for some odd reason. Why don't people wrap their arms around Patrick Mahomes? Why is it, no, he's not that good. Josh Allen's a better quarterback. Okay. Oh, no, Tom Brady's better. He's 45. He's still better than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes will never be as good as Tom Brady. Okay, he's better than him right now. I could go through the entire league. Somebody would find an argument of why that guy is better than Patrick Mahomes. Oh, he doesn't have Tyreek Hill anymore. He's not any good. Okay. Well, let's just go through this list. Josh Allen, 3-1. Patrick Mahomes has a 3-1 record. He has a better touchdown to interception ratio. Oh, no, yeah. He just whooped Tom Brady's ass last night on the road. While Josh Allen, on the road in Baltimore, Maryland, couldn't cover the spread against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Ravens, -3.5. Bills won by 3. Good game. Ravens covered the spread. It's for you gambling addicts out there. Like yours truly. While the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were a 1-point favorite at home, not only did they not cover the number, the Kansas City Chiefs won outright. But the plays last night by Patrick Mahomes illustrate why he is still, I could do my Bruce Buffer, and still the best player in the National Football League, Patrick Mahomes, period, point. 6 out of the first 7 drives last night, the Kansas City Chiefs scored touchdowns. 6 out of the first 7. Against a Tampa defense that I think is very good. But you can be really good, but then you run into a buzzsaw. Then you run into somebody who's just different than everybody else. I saw Josh Allen yesterday play against the Baltimore defense, who gave up over 40 points to Tua Tagovailoa, an average quarterback, not a real good football team in Miami, lauded by some. They give up 40 points to them. Josh Allen scored 23 yesterday. 23 points. Is that a lot, or is that a big day from Josh Allen? I mean, Bill still won the game, but I mean, 23 points. I think most explosive offense in the NFL, the best team, the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl would win. These labels, odds-on favorite, and it's a crippling thing to these teams because the Chiefs weren't favorited. Mahomes wasn't voted the best player. So whatever they can do this year, it's great. It's gravy. It's, wow, I didn't see this coming. Noah did. Noah predicted them to win the Super Bowl, as I repeat myself in the third person. But some people saw that they were going to be a good team. Knew that Patrick Mahomes was not just some dud quarterback who needed a deep threat to win games. Got to an AFC Championship game last year, dinking and dunking the football. Because he's that damn good. He can do whatever the hell he wants out there. But you look around sports. Odds-on favorite to win anything. Odds-on favorite to win the World Series, the Toronto Blue Jays. They didn't win their division. I think the Bills will win their division, at least. The Blue Jays didn't win their own division. Favorited to win the World Series before the season started. So was the season a success? Well, let's be honest here, Blue Jays fans. Based on that criteria, no, it wasn't. We'll see what they can do in the playoffs. Likely going to play my Mariners, who clinched on Friday night. First time since 2001. Great story. How about the National Hockey League? This was pointed out to me last week. I believe this was from Seamus. It was either Seamus on the show or I was chatting with somebody about odds, the best odds to win the Stanley Cup. And I was told that the Toronto Maple Leafs have better odds to win the Stanley Cup than the Tampa Bay Lightning. I nearly dropped to my knees. I mean, this is stupidity 101. This is gambling books trying to get people to sucker their bets. Could Toronto win the Stanley Cup this year? Absolutely. But do they deserve to be favorited over the Tampa Bay Lightning? No. So you know what's even worse about that is when they fail, which they normally do, it looks even worse. It's another thing added to the plate. Thanksgiving's coming up. You add that to the plate of despair. But all that coming back together. Sometimes it's too easy to admit what's right in front of you. When somebody is dealing with something on a personal level, whether it's an addiction, somebody is suffering from mental illness, whatever it might be, you don't want to talk about it. Most people don't want to address it because it's a negative thing. It's tough. It's difficult. Life is tough enough. You don't want to go help somebody else through their own personal struggle because you're dealing with your own crap, which I understand. But it's in this scenario, you're like, well, Mahomes is the best, but you know what? They're telling me the Bills are better. They're telling me that Josh Allen's a better player than Patrick Mahomes. So you know what? Everybody else thinks that, so I'm just going to go with it. And it's wrong. It's stupid. It's not the way I look at things. And you look at the game, this year, has Josh Allen played that great since opening night? Has Josh Allen looked that dominant? Played okay against the Titans. Didn't have a great game against the Miami Dolphins. And he played good against the Ravens, but the Ravens don't have a good defense. Compare the two guys yesterday. The Bucs have a top 5 scoring defense the last 2 seasons in the NFL. The Ravens have the most big 20-plus yards plays allowed the last 2 years in the NFL. The Ravens. Marcus Peters, yeah, he's getting burned every time he's on the field. That's what's happening with the Ravens. Disaster land. It doesn't have to be a big narrative. It doesn't have to be something flashy. It's just the truth. I deal in truth. I often think, how many people tell the truth? Because the media game, the world game, it's based on a lot of lies. It's based on a fictional book. It's based on true events, they say, but then you turn the page and realize that it's nonfiction. I look at the story and I look at Patrick Mahomes last night. The sidearm throws, his connection with Travis Kelce, the Kansas City Chiefs' ability to run the football. The Chiefs might have lost to the Colts. It's an ugly loss. It's a game they should have won. But they bounced back. They beat a very good Tampa Bay team, a team I expect to win their division. And you look at it, you have a terrible offensive game from Mahomes. He bounces back with his best in a very long time. And it's no coincidence to me that he has that kind of game in the location where he lost his Super Bowl. Been to 2 Super Bowls. He lost one in Tampa. It was a tough game. He didn't play well. It was ugly at times. But I think he took that on the chin and said, you know what? I'm going to rectify this. I'm going to play better. And did he last night? I'd say so. 3 touchdown passes. But this Chiefs team is just scratching the surface. The Bills still need to find a rushing attack. I don't trust that rushing attack. How about the Chiefs, where they have competing running backs who both look great? Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the third-year back, being driven to perform by rookie 7th-rounder Isaiah Pacheco, who runs every time he gets the football, it's as if it's his last carry. He gives everything he can, maximum effort. He breaks off tackles. I love watching this kid play. But then you see Clyde check back into the game. When he gets the ball, he wants to make the most out of his carries. Both of these guys are not going down easy because they don't want to be pushed out of the lineup. They don't want to be a healthy scratch. They don't want to get 4 carries a game. Both these guys can do it. The key for the Chiefs is Andy Reid keep running the football. You don't have to run it 30 times a game. You have Patrick Mahomes on your team. But just enough to break into defenses so that Patrick Mahomes has more room to create. More room to make plays last night like he did to Kelce, like he did to Valdez-Scantling down the field, like the crazy pass he did to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the back of the end zone. I mean, the RPO game from Mahomes, his ability outside the pocket to make throws. We just seem to take for granted what this guy can do. That he's a unicorn of unicorns. We saw Aaron Rodgers and said this guy's the most skilled player to ever play in the NFL, ever. But then Patrick Mahomes came along and you're like, well, is Aaron Rodgers really all that great? Because Mahomes is just that good. He's that talented. The Chiefs to me delivered a statement last night. You go to Tampa Bay, your second straight road game, and you win it. You improved to 3-1. You're leading your division. And Tampa drops to 2-2. But not only that, you get a big win against a team that could be in the Super Bowl, that could represent the NFC in the Super Bowl by the end of the year. You ultimately showed up and showed out for last night in Tampa Bay. It was never a close game. Looking at the other side of it, I think I saw some things from Tampa Bay that would make me a little, if I'm a Tampa fan, which I think there's just Brady fans, because if you're a New England fan this year, you're not going to be happy because your team's going to stink. So you need to pivot somewhere. You'll likely go back to where your bread was buttered. You go to Tom Brady. Having Mike Evans back is a must, and it is a game changer for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's a guy that can have a big play and he's just run him anywhere on the field. Tom Brady will throw him the ball. He's likely going to catch it. 8 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He's got a big catch radius. He's a red zone dream. The dude's just a flat-out star, Mike Evans. And Tom Brady loves him. He can throw him the ball. And I also think Russell Gage needs to be used more in the offense. He's a guy that can have an impact on the game in the slot, but he needs to get reps with Brady. He needs to I think he's been banged up the last couple weeks as well, so that's not great that he's playing injured and you're not seeing the full explosion on his routes. But Mike Evans being back is something that the Bucs needed because Brashad Perriman was frustrating Tom Brady to death. To me, Cameron Brate left with a concussion last night. He's a frustrating receiver. He's got all the trappings of a great tight end. His body, he is athletic, but he can't seem to hold on to the football. He drops easy catches, and that can frustrate the hell out of Brady, and he can lose it on guys. I think Brady is making calls. I think he's texting Rob Gronkowski right now saying, when are you coming back? Because quite frankly, I need you. Chris Godwin is banged up every game. There's a play in every game where you're like, did Chris Godwin just end his season again? Did he just get seriously injured? Because last night one play did not look pretty late in that game. Because you can have Mike Evans, but you need another target alongside Mike Evans. It can be Chris Godwin, but you need it to work. You need him to be available. Julio Jones is unreliable. He looked great in week 1, but again, he was really ineffective last night, and he's constantly injured as well. His wide receiving core has been snake bitten by injuries. Gronk, is going to play when he comes back. He's got a massive catch radius. He's got the biggest connection in the history of the game with Tom Brady. He's retired twice. He can come out of retirement a third time. Brady comes out of retirement all the time. Gronk does it. It's just something that they do. To me, Tampa needs another tight end. They needed a tight end that Tom Brady can trust. Cameron Brate is not going to be that guy for me. And you're not going to find a team that's just going to give up a great player to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because you need a tight end. At this point, anyway. Atlanta Falcons aren't trading Kyle Pitts to the Buccaneers. Houston Texans don't have a tight end that you'd want. These bad teams. Pratt Freiermuth is not going to be dealt from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's too valuable. He's too good of a receiver. But Tampa did show signs. Their defense had a really rough night last night. I'm sure Todd Bowles is going to rip into them because Devin White and Levante David, who are normally such a great linebacking duo, the heart of that defense, what makes them tick, they were completely lost last night. They couldn't contain Mahomes. They didn't know what to do. They were reading Kelsey wrong. He had a field day with those guys. They ran into each other at points. It was just a night that they want to forget. They want to rip up that tape and say, let's move forward. Something about this Tampa defense is they don't leave. They just take it. We've seen them have bad nights before. We've seen them get into games and you're like, well, yeah, that was ugly. That was ugly for that defense. But you know what? They took it on the chin. They come back. They lost to the Chiefs in the regular season in 2020. What happened? They regrouped. They went through a playoff run. Their defense got better down the stretch. They didn't allow a passing touchdown from Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl. They intercepted him twice. He had a 52.8 quarterback rating. And they sacked him 5 times. They regrouped, they found an edge, and they played fantastic. This defense can find it. They played the first 3 weeks, they were fantastic. And they still have all the players that can do it. Because another thing, they didn't really take penalties last night. Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, the guys in the secondary, they just played them straight up. And the receivers won last night for Kansas City. But to a regular season game, Valdez-Scantling doesn't have a whole lot of experience. Juju's been in games, but again, he's been a lesser role for the Pittsburgh Steelers in these playoff games, and he's not targeted that often. But you get to see Brady and Mahomes play in a regular season, and Mahomes looked a whole lot better than Tom Brady. Tom Brady had a whole lot of success when the game was over. When the Chiefs had put up 3 touchdowns and the game was completely out of hand, then you saw Tom Brady because the defense gave him whatever he wanted. He chugged down the field. He hit 2 touchdowns to Mike Evans, threw another. He had a very good he almost threw for 400 yards last night, had a very good stat line. The Bucs were never in that game. The game was over at halftime. The game was over at halftime, and 5:25 left in the third quarter. The Chiefs scored a touchdown to get 41 points. Curtains. That game was over, and the Bucs were just scoring points so that Tom Brady and that offense could add some statistics to their night. But otherwise, it was inconsequential. It didn't matter. Meaningless, empty calorie yardage from Tom Brady. He played fine. He fumbled. Special teams fumbled for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Can't do anything about that. But looking at week 4, Tampa's 2-2. Beat Dallas. You beat New Orleans in New Orleans, which is becoming less and less impressive a victory as they continue to fall deeper and deeper into that pit. Then you lose to the Packers and you lose to the Chiefs. I look at that. The Bucs beat the two weaker teams. They lost to 2 teams I expect to go deep in the playoffs. They lost to a Packer team that has flaws that I think will be competing with Minnesota the whole season for the NFC North title. While the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lose at home to the Kansas City Chiefs, the team I expect to win the AFC West. Team I expect to win the Super Bowl. They don't have an impressive win yet on their resume, to me. I expect them to beat the Saints. I bet on them. They did. Saints aren't a good football team. Saints were lauded as a sneaky Super Bowl. No, they're not. They're injured. They're inconsistent. And they find ways to lose games, quite frankly. They're 1-3 alongside the Carolina Panthers. They lost to Carolina. That is New Orleans right now. Double doink New Orleans is what is being talked about the Saints right now in the Bayou. LSU is 4-1. LSU under Brian Kelly is having some success after losing to Florida State on Labor Day. They are ranked, LSU. I know. Comeback against Auburn this weekend. LSU starting to turn it around in the SEC conference. While New Orleans is playing horrible. New Orleans has quarterback problems. Michael Thomas is injured again. What else is new? But Tampa Bay beat the 2 teams they should. They lost to the 2 teams that are better than them right now. But as I just said, this team improves as the season goes on because it's a Tom Brady-led football team. I don't expect if these two teams play again, which would only be in the Super Bowl, I wouldn't expect this type of dominance from the Kansas City offense because I would expect Todd Bowles and that Tampa Bay defense to make adjustments to get some kind of pressure on Patrick Mahomes because that offensive line for Kansas City is fantastic. Joe Thuney is such an X factor for this team. There's a reason you can run the football effectively now. It's because that offensive line is creating holes for these 2 guys. Creed Humphrey and Joe Thuney are just X factors they've created. It's a different offense for Patrick Mahomes than what he had prior. Even when he won the Super Bowl, the offensive line was not the strength of the team. It is one of the strengths now. But I give credit to Patrick Mahomes. He takes it on the chin. All these other players are better than him, and somehow he just continues to win. He continues to have success. He's getting the McDavid treatment where Matthews is better than him now. And Crosby is at 38 years old, and he's better than Connor McDavid. Cale Makar is better than... No. Connor McDavid is still the best player in the NHL. Patrick Mahomes is still the best player in the NFL. We've just seen him for a little while now. We're sick of the greatness. Why? I don't know. Were people sick of Wayne Gretzky? Were you sick of watching Michael Jordan do his thing with the Chicago Bulls? To me, it's just this new era with fans and media where it has to be something new all the time. You can't enjoy what's in front of you. It's always, well, it's on to the next thing. It's on to the next thing. Well, what are we going to do with our team after this? Well, what do you see happening with the next contract? You can't enjoy the moment. It's panic. It's not sitting and saying, wow, we're watching one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time play football. We get to experience it. We get to witness it uphand and in person that Patrick Mahomes is putting on a show in Tampa Bay. And he did that last night for the faithful at Raymond James Stadium. Pivoting to Maryland in Baltimore. Been talking about this game a little bit, mixing it in with the Kansas City game because Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, these guys can all be talked in the same manner, so to speak, where they're often grouped together. And yesterday, I talked about the Buffalo Bills only scoring 23 points offensively. Josh Allen did not win this game yesterday for the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills won the game yesterday because their defense locked people up. To me, the Buffalo Bills defense watched the game in week 3 where they hardly touched the field. They were not a big part of it. Josh Allen was on the field a ton. Offensively, he played 90 plays, and he saw that offense was wiped out. And to me, the defense felt like they needed to do something to rectify what had happened. Well, they did yesterday. Josh Allen threw an interception, which led to his short field touchdown. And it was a 20-point lead for the Ravens. It was 20-3 Ravens at one point. And then in the second half, the Buffalo Bills defense did not allow a point. The Buffalo Bills defense said, no way. And not only that, they intercepted Lamar Jackson twice. Jordan Poyer came away with 2 interceptions, the real captain of that defense. They got good, consistent pressure. And the Bills just had a day. Like I said, Josh Allen doesn't get the game ball. If I'm watching the game yesterday, he doesn't get the game ball for me. Yesterday, the game ball for the Buffalo Bills, the best player on the field was Tremaine Edmonds, the linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, who was all over the field. Edmonds and Matt Milano both deserve the game ball because they kept Lamar Jackson in the pocket. They didn't let him scramble too much. They kept him in front of him. And not only that, they made key tackles. Matt Milano made a key third down tackle. And Jordan Poyer got an interception with 4 minutes remaining in the game, mainly because Tremaine Edmonds got into the face of Lamar Jackson. He threw a pass he'd like to have back, and it was intercepted in the back of the end zone. But let's talk about this game a little bit. So as I mentioned, the Bills just rally. They make it 20-20 early in the fourth quarter. Josh Allen scrambles for a rushing touchdown. And I say, okay, here we go. We got a quarter. The game is tied. It can go either way. The Baltimore Ravens then go on a 9-minute drive, which is something they do often. That is how Baltimore scores touchdowns. They go chunk by chunk. Give it to J.K. Dobbins. He'll flip the ball to Mark Andrews. He'll find Rashad Bateman in the slot. They just move, or Lamar will scramble for a first down. That is the way Baltimore runs their offense. They control the time of possession. They make smart decisions with the football. And they just have an offense that has a whole lot of options with Andrews, who can go in the middle. He can spread outside. He can be a wide receiver. Or Devin Duvernay, who's become just a Swiss Army knife on special teams, and he's also used in the slot. So you go down the field, you get into the red area, and you start running the football. J.K. Dobbins gets a carry, Justice Hill. Lamar Jackson has his pass batted down on third down and brings you to fourth down. 4:25 to play, and John Harbaugh has an interesting decision. He can kick a field goal, or he can go for it on fourth down with 4:25 to play to try to put up a touchdown. And Harbaugh, the Super Bowl winning head coach, decides to go for the score. This was widely debated topic on Twitter. Analysts trying to debate whether it was a good decision. Here's my 2 cents. I have too much respect for Josh Allen and the Bills offense to expect the Baltimore Ravens defense, who, as I mentioned at the top of the show, gave up over 40 points to Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins offense, to stop Josh Allen, to not allow a touchdown with 4:25 left in the game. I have too much respect for the Bills to think that they would not score a touchdown on that drive. Not to mention they had scored touchdowns on back-to-back possessions prior to this long drive by the Ravens. So Harbaugh made the only decision in my mind, which is you play to win the game. You see what's in front of you, you view your opponent, and you also have to look at your defense. And he decided we're going to go for it on fourth down. I was more upset with this play. Here's the reason. The plays from the shotgun, I don't like that. I'd rather have Lamar under center where he can run back, he can do a bootleg, he can do an RPO fake action that you can get him on the outside. You have guys moving, the defense has to move with you. On this play, he's standing in the pocket and everybody's just converging. Except Tremaine Edmonds, who breaks through. He gets a good head start on Lamar. Lamar is back at his own 20-yard line, so he has to heave one into the back of the end zone, and Poyer intercepts it. The play call, the play design is what I have a problem with. Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, I don't like the play call. I'm fine with the decision, but have multiple options. Make the Bills defense cover more than just Lamar Jackson. And this is the one critique you can have of the Baltimore offense, is that it's too Lamar-centric. Lamar Jackson is one of the best players in the NFL, but he can't do everything. You need somebody to help you on certain plays. Obviously, you throw the ball, a guy's going to help you. But also, have some movement. Fake it to J.K. Dobbins. Give it to Justice Hill. Have somebody that they can get the ball in the backfield so that the Bills have to converge on that player as well. It's not just, okay, Lamar has it, everybody block him up. They all converged. Tremaine Edmonds broke through, got a rushing start, and Lamar had to heave the ball. He was going out of bounds. He had to heave the ball, and Jordan Poyer intercepted it. But we saw what happened. The Bills drive down the field. They would have scored a touchdown, but the Ravens, stupidly, with about 1:44 left, tackled, I believe it was Zach Moss at the Baltimore 1, which then they could stop the clock. Baltimore used their final timeout, and guess what? Then Josh Allen just started taking knees till the clock came down to 3 seconds left, and out came Zach Bass to kick a game-winning field goal. Bad decision-making from the Baltimore defense. They couldn't get a stop. They had a chance on a third down. They couldn't bring him down. But the play call from John Harbaugh was absolutely the right one. You don't play to tie, you play to win. Buffalo had all the momentum. And yes, you just had a 9-minute drive, but you go 9 minutes with only 3 points. That's deflating as well for Lamar to go into that sideline. The Bills defense just found a way to be big in a bigger moment than the Baltimore defense did. Sure, Josh Allen then had to drive down the field, and he did. He had a very good drive, but at the same time, he doesn't have that. He has more pressure to tie the game than if Jordan Poyer doesn't have that interception. They just have to get a field goal. It's a walk-off chip shot field goal for Tyler Bass. I would say for Baltimore, you saw at the end of the game, Marcus Peters flipped out on John Harbaugh. These two had to be separated. I'm not sure what happened. To me, it must have been the tackle late in the game because that made no sense to me. Let him score. You get the ball back. Give the ball to Lamar Jackson. Give him a chance to win the game. They didn't recognize that what position they were in. They could have let them score on that play. Then they would have had a timeout and 1:45 seconds to go down and get a game-tying touchdown. Get a touchdown, go for 2, you win the game by 1. That's the way I would have handled it. But there's your option right there, which I think Baltimore would have gone for 2 if they would have gone down and scored a touchdown, because I've seen Harbaugh do it before with Lamar Jackson. But instead, you stupidly tackle a guy, and that's the game. You let the clock go out, you hand the ball to the Buffalo Bills, and they win. Marcus Peters should be frustrated because he's played like trash the first 4 weeks. Marlon Humphrey gets an interception yesterday. He's the great corner. Marcus Peters used to be the all-pro that nobody liked to throw to. He used to be an interception guy, then people stopped throwing to him. But since he's gotten injured, this season he's not played well. He's been getting burned by Tyreek Hill, by Stephon Diggs. It doesn't matter who Marcus Peters is covering. That wide receiver gets the better of Marcus Peters. So to me, Marcus Peters is getting frustrated because he's not as good of a player as he used to be. Which, when you tear your ACL, that's bound to happen. John Harbaugh is probably frustrated because he can't make the plays he used to. He's not the player he used to be. But I will say for the Ravens, you're 2-2, and you're tied with the Bengals and the Browns. You're better than both teams. You blew a game against the Dolphins. We had a huge lead, and you give up 21 unanswered. That's an inexcusable loss. That can't happen. You found a way to lose that game. Now you lose to the Bills, where you had a 20-3 lead, and you put up 0 second-half points. That's inexcusable. Didn't find a way to put up any offense in the second half, and then your defense sucked the big one in week 2. It's got to be frustrating for John Harbaugh and that team to look and say, we are tied with the Browns and the Bengals, who the Bengals were off to an 0-2 start. They've won back-to-back games against the Jets and Dolphins. Are the Bengals great yet? No, their offense hasn't looked great. Didn't play well against Miami on a Thursday night. But they're 2-2. That's all that matters. If they find it, they go on a run. The Browns are with Jacoby Brissett. Deshaun Watson hasn't played a game yet, and yet you're tied with them in the standings. You want to push yourself ahead of the Cleveland Browns. Browns have beaten the Panthers. They beat the Steelers. Losing to the Falcons and losing to the Jets, of all teams. Makes no sense, the Cleveland Browns. That's a nutshell of the NFL right now, where you beat teams that you shouldn't, you lose to teams that you should beat. Falcons, 2-2. But for Baltimore, we talked about last week with Buffalo, situational football. This is situational football to me with Baltimore. Don't let your foot off the throttle. You had the game against Miami. You blew it. You had this week's game, and you blew it. Not to mention, if my memory serves me correct, you lost both those games at home. You lost to Miami in Maryland. You lose to Buffalo in Maryland. You beat New England in New England, and you won at the Meadowlands against the Jets. I love Lamar Jackson. I still think he's one of the best players in the NFL. Did he play his great game? He didn't have a great game yesterday. But again, it's about a narrative. It's about what's the storyline of the weekend. He's been fantastic through 3 weeks. He had an okay game yesterday. Josh Allen had a crap game in week 3. Patrick Mahomes had a crap game in week 3. Tom Brady had a crap first 3 weeks. Aaron Rodgers hasn't had a great game this year. These things happen. They're players. They're human beings. So does that make Lamar now the argument will shift. He should have took the money after saying, he's going to make more money after the first 3 weeks of the season. No, that doesn't change anything. It's a stupid argument. It's a stupid debate. Let Michael Irvin and Stephen A. Smith have that one on First Take. I'm not going to be the one to do it. He's still one of the most gifted players in the National Football League, period. They just happened to lose a game yesterday. But Marcus Peters, I told you in week 2, figure it out. You still need to figure it out. I get it, you're coming off an injury, but you're on a team that has expectations to win the AFC North. Well, the Ravens got a test. They got the Bengals Sunday Night Football. Bengals are going to have 10 days off because they played on Thursday. They'll be pretty healthy for that Ravens game. It's a great Sunday nighter. 2-2 teams in the AFC North will do battle on Sunday night. Just one of the intriguing Week 5 games to look ahead to. But I can't wait for that one. Before we get to the Denver Broncos and that clown show, What a weekend in the NFL for just craziness. If I would have told you this weekend that the Jets, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Atlanta Falcons were all going to win. Wow. Let's start with the Seahawks to me, which is so interesting. The Seattle Seahawks are 2-2, as are the Denver Broncos, who have their former quarterback. The Seattle defeated the Detroit Lions. The Lions are 1-3, and they're a good football team, but they can't stop anyone. They gave up 38 points in week 1 to the Philadelphia Eagles. They gave up 48 points yesterday to the Seattle Seahawks offense. Rashad Penny tearing them up. Geno Smith, who has the best QBR in all of football, if you can believe it. And they gave up 28 points last week to Minnesota in a game they should have won. The Detroit Lions could be 4-0, but instead they are 1-3. Jared Goff's playing good football. TJ Hawkinson almost had 200 yards receiving yesterday. He had 2 touchdowns. An electric offense for the Detroit Lions, yet their defense can't stop anyone. Geno Smith airing the ball. Rashad Penny rushes for over 140 and 2 touchdowns yesterday. Tyler Lockett gets a touchdown. It's perplexing for Detroit that they are 1-3 because they're better than 1-3. They are better than a 1-3 football team because Jared Goff's playing the best I've ever seen him play to start a season. Yes, they didn't have Armand St. Brown. Yes, they didn't have Swift this week. They still put up 45 fucking points. They still could not be stopped on offense, but that defense under Aaron Glenn is a disaster. TJ Hawkinson's not having the type of production you expected from the guy. 3 sacks in week 2, pretty quiet otherwise. Their second, Jeff Okudah's getting burned. They're rushing, they can't stop the run. 4 rushing touchdowns in week 1 to the Eagles. How about 3 yesterday to the Seahawks? Oy vey, the Detroit Lions are a mess right now. They're just a mess. Luckily, they have the Patriots in week 5, who are more of a mess, but they're both 1-3, which is funny nonetheless. The New York Jets are 2-2, 3rd place in the AFC East. Anytime the Jets are not last in the AFC East is breaking news. But to think about it this way, the Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers are last in their respective divisions. If that's not a changing of the guard, I don't know what is. In New England, to me, if Bill Belichick is the greatest coach of all time, I'm not going to debate that. But there's also something that is not up for debate either. It's that he's not good at evaluating talent. He's not good at finding receivers in the draft. He's not good at finding skill position players for his quarterbacks. Jacoby Myers, a converted quarterback, is your number 1. He couldn't play the last 2 weeks. You bring in Devontae Parker from Miami, who they couldn't wait to get rid of. It was very Matt Murray-esque from Ottawa to Toronto. You have a couple good running backs in Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson from Alabama and Oklahoma, respectively. But, I mean, it's thin. There's not a whole lot there. Then I look at Mike Tomlin, who I love. Your team just doesn't have a whole lot of talent. You have a rookie quarterback, and you made the change after the first half yesterday to go to Kenny Pickett. It wasn't Mitch Trubisky's fault that you're losing. Your roster just isn't that good. Matt Canada as offensive coordinator doesn't really bring a whole lot of hype, doesn't bring a whole lot of creativity to the team. But The Steelers and the Patriots are 1-3. If I'm Robert Kraft in New England, this is not going to be a good year for the Patriots. Mac Jones is injured. High ankle sprain. To me, he was never going to play last week. I doubt he will play this weekend against the Lions. Maybe he will, but I doubt it. If he can't play for a number of weeks, Brian Hoyer left the game in the first quarter with a concussion. Bailey Zappi had to come in and play. Credit to Bailey Zappi, who had no idea he was going to be playing. He's a 7th-round rookie. First rookie quarterback this season to throw a touchdown pass. Who had that in the bingo card? He nearly played well enough to beat Aaron Rodgers. But to think Bailey Zappi is going to be your quarterback moving forward and you're going to have success, you just aren't in New England. He's a young quarterback. He's green. He's a 7th-round pick for a reason. They're going to be picking high in the draft because they don't have a whole lot of talent, and Mac Jones isn't a great quarterback to begin with. Well, this is what comes up. Do the Patriots stick with Mac Jones? And if you think that conversation is premature, it isn't, because when you have a high draft pick, everything is on the table. You evaluate every position on your team. And I'm not saying the Patriots should think of firing Bill Belichick. But what I would do is I wouldn't let him be drafting players anymore. I'd be hiring a general manager. I'd be hiring a talent evaluator, a president of football operations to run my football department that would make draft picks for Bill Belichick to then coach. Because he's not drafting great players. He's bringing in guys to your roster that aren't helping. He signed Matt Judon in free agency. That was good. Matt Judon worked out. He had a hell of a game yesterday. Did Jonnu Smith work out? Not really. Has Hunter Henry been a great find for the New England Patriots? No. The Italian evaluator, Bill Belichick, has not put a great product on the field in a very long time for the Patriots. Tom Brady masked that this roster was crap. Crap. And I know it's tough for New England fans who are used to success, who are used to seeing Super Bowls to hear that, but it's just the flat-out truth. Your wide receiving core sucks. Your tight end group doesn't have a whole lot of talent and they can't block. Your running backs are good, but then again, your offensive line isn't all that great either. So what that comes down to me is simple solution. Bill Belichick can coach a team. He's the best coach ever. But he should not be drafting. He should not be signing free agents to a team. Now, you go to Bill Belichick and he might tell you, you're not taking that position from me. Well, guess what? Then you're fired. It's as simple as that. Yes, he's a great coach. But if he's going to coach a bunch of lackluster players, he's not going to have any success anyway. It defeats the purpose of having a great coach if you don't have great players. Because it doesn't work. You can be a great coach. You can have all the hopes in the world that you're going to be a great musician, a great anything. If you can't play it, you can't play it. Stevie Wonder can't see, but we all know he can damn well play the piano. We know that he can sing. Some people can see everything going right in front of them. Guess what? They can't play anything. Bill Belichick knows all the schemes. He knows all the plays. He knows it top to bottom in New England and what he wants to do to have success. He's done it forever. But if he's looking around saying, I got Mac Jones, Jacoby Myers, and player X off the street who I grabbed in the 5th round from BYU, I don't think he's going to have a whole lot of success in New England long term. Bring in an Italian evaluator. Bring in a true general manager to bring this team back to relevancy. They stayed great for a long time. They're not going to anymore. All great things must come to an end. In this case, it's going to come to an end for the New England Patriots. Because you just don't have that great of skill players. Mac Jones is injured. If Mac Jones was injured, this team would still have 5-6 wins. I told you this before the season. Matt Wright and me debated. I said they're not making the playoffs. Patriots. And the worst thing that this team can do is not make the playoffs, which they won't, and the excuse being, well, we didn't have Mac. No. You would have missed the playoffs with Mac. He was showing regression. He wasn't as good as he was the last season. Teams can fool themselves. New England hopefully knows themselves well enough to look in the mirror and say, yeah, we almost beat Green Bay yesterday, but because Green Bay's offense is a trash can right now. Looking at this game before I get to the Falcons, I want to talk about all those three teams. The Jets, Seahawks, and Falcons winning yesterday. Green Bay. That offense is questionable to say the least. Aaron Rodgers does not trust any receiver down the field, 15 plus yards, other than Allen Lazard. He does not trust Christian Watson. He does not trust Romeo Doubs. Case in point, Romeo Doubs dropped the game-winning touchdown late in the game yesterday. He does not. Randall Cobb didn't have a catch yesterday. The entire offense are slants, screens, and running the football. I talked about that was the transition of this offense that you're going to have to go to using your running backs. Use both running backs on the field at the same time with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Wide receiver screens to Watson to get the ball in his hands. Get the ball to Watson to run the football. Because he does not trust anybody down the field. And he still doesn't. That first half from Aaron Rodgers, I had the stats here because I had to write it down because I couldn't believe how bad he was yesterday. Aaron Rodgers in the first half of that game yesterday was 3 for 10, 38 yards, and a pick six. That's as bad as it gets for Aaron Rodgers. He was livid with receivers. He had no connection with anyone. And they were forced to run the football down New England's throat. New England's run defense was the reason Green Bay ended up winning, and I also credit the officials. The officials were very helpful to Aaron Rodgers late in that game yesterday. Bill Belichick was losing his mind. I think he had every right to. Because every time it seemed that it was a third down, they throw a flag. They bail out Aaron Rodgers for not throwing a great ball. I just see offenses that I think can get better. I mentioned Tampa Bay. I think their offense will improve because Mike Evans is back and they got targets. I don't know that Christian Watson is going to be a great receiver by the end of the year. I haven't seen it yet. Nothing that would tell me that. Romeo Doubs. He ran a great route with 2 minutes left in the game last night. Boy, he dropped the ball in the end zone. Easy touchdown, beautiful throw from Rodgers. He dropped it. Cobb. Randall Cobb, he's a good slot receiver, but this is probably his last season in the NFL. He's an older guy. He isn't what he used to be. He's okay. Robert Tonyan, he's an X factor because Aaron Rodgers loved him a few years ago. He did catch a touchdown yesterday. He could be a big player in this offense for Green Bay if they're going to be successful, if they're going to go deep in the playoffs. But I mean, come on. You're in that type of game against the Patriots, who are onto their third string quarterback, who lost Jonnu Smith in the first half, who lost J.C. Jackson in the offseason, who just have a roster that you're not impressed with. The defense didn't play great yesterday for New England. You come away with the win. That's the biggest thing you can say for Green Bay, and the best thing I can also say is that they're playing a lot of bad teams in the next couple weeks. Yes, on paper, next week they have a tough game. They're going to play the 3-1 Giants in London. The Giants are not 3-1 good. Not to mention the Giants lost Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor in the game yesterday. Daniel Jones hurt his ankle. He had to leave the game. Tyrod Taylor came in. He would then left the game with a concussion. They had to run the Wildcat late in the game. Thankfully, the Giants were playing the Bears, and they beat them because the Bears stink. But Daniel Jones had 63 yards passing yesterday, and he played three quarters of that game. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, but he had 63 yards passing. This Giants team lacks great skill players. I mean, they rival New England. Daniel Jones is better than Bailey Zappi currently, but yeah, they look similar. Kenny Golladay is a lot like Devontae Parker, a big receiver that seems like he has all the talent in the world, but you throw him a 5-yard slant and he drops the ball. Kadarius Toney, sort of like Kendrick Bourne, but he's not allowed to play in the offense. They don't use him enough. He's not allowed in the field. Those two are similar. Bellinger, a tight end that I kind of like, but not really full athleticism. You need to put him on screens so that he can go for little passes. Kind of like Hunter Henry. Both these offenses are eerily similar now that I talk about it. Saquon Barkley is better than Damian Harris, but I really like the combination of Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. Two teams that don't have great offenses. Two teams that Joe Judge used to coach offense for Daniel Jones. So there's another little connection with New England's offense run under Joe Judge and used to be in New York under Joe Judge, now with their new head coach, Brian Daboll, who I just blanked on, but then I remembered. Green Bay is 3-1. They should be happy to be 3-1. They should be 2-2 in my mind because they didn't deserve to win the game yesterday. They barely squeaked out a win against Tampa Bay in week 3. New England fans embrace the losses. High draft pick is something that will do this team good. They haven't had one in a very long time. Mac Jones at 15 wasn't a high draft pick, but if they have a type of season where Mac Jones doesn't come back for a while, Brian Hoyer's not playing because he's concussed, and Bailey Zappi is starting against the Detroit Lions, you're going to lose that game. You're going to lose that game, and then before you know it, you're 1-4. Then you still have to play the Bills twice. You got to play the Dolphins again, and who knows, maybe the Jets can beat you one of those 2 times because the Jets are better than you. Then before you know it, you have a top 5 pick in the draft. And if you're not considering a quarterback at that pick, you're not doing your job correctly. Belichick would be the one to zag when everybody else is zigging, but that doesn't mean it's the right decision. But New England will be interesting to track the rest of the way because of just how bad I think it can get for this team. Also, the Falcons beat the Browns. Falcons were actually a favorite at home, but they did get the win. Good for the Falcons. That's all I can say. Arthur Smith, second-year head coach. He doesn't have a great roster in Atlanta. Marcus Mariota was brought in to be that stopgap quarterback. He's won back-to-back games as the starting quarterback. And you beat Cleveland at home. That's an impressive win for me. You got it out. Cordell Patterson didn't play the entire second half. He was placed on injured reserve today, which is a huge loss for the Falcons. He's a massive part of their offense. But you just find ways to win right now for Atlanta. You're 2-2. You can hopefully play some meaningful football later into the season. That'd be great for guys like Kyle Pitts, AJ Terrell, the young Drake London, the youngsters on this team to experience that. Also good for Marcus Mariota to play in these type of games and validate himself. If you're looking at it, Trubisky or Mariota, Mariota's been the better quarterback. Pittsburgh went with Trubisky. Mariota was the second option. Atlanta scooped him up. Mariota's 2-2. Trubisky is 1-3, and he's been benched and not happy about it in Pittsburgh. But of those 3 games, the most surprising win, I'd have to go Seahawks. I expected the Lions to win yesterday, and the Seahawks came out and they threw the ball around. Disappointing loss for the Lions. They'll remember that loss if their season goes awry and that defense, because their offense cannot be stopped right now. You don't have St. Brown, you don't have Swift, and you still put up 45 points. That's tough to do, and yet they still find a way to lose that game in typical Detroit fashion. Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos. I don't know what was the least surprising yesterday. Was that the Broncos had a great first half and Russell Wilson was playing fantastic, or the fact that they lost the game? The Denver Broncos are this anomaly team that you look at them and you just say, yeah, this team is full of skill. They have everything you want in a team, but then they can't put it all together. You look at the game yesterday, It's just a Nathaniel Hackett, Russell Wilson show where Russell Wilson's starting to throw the ball. He's starting to have success. He completes 12 of his first 13 passes of the game, which is great. He hadn't been doing for all season long. You're starting to push the ball down the field a little bit. Cortland Sutton's getting involved. He finally feels the ball between his hands. Jerry Jeudy. But then you get a turnover. Melvin Gordon fumbles. Raiders pick it up. They return it to the house. And then Russell Wilson decides he needs to hold the ball far too long in the second half, and Mason Crosby ends up with 3 sacks. The one guy in that Vegas defense that's been making a difference, you allow him to beat you. 3 sacks on Russell Wilson was all over the field, and the Broncos lose in Vegas. Derek Carr didn't even throw for 200 yards. But Josh Jacobs ran for 2 touchdowns, had over 130 yards rushing. The Denver Broncos defense could not stop. The rushing defense could not stop anybody. Derek Carr ran for over 40 yards, and that's not his skill set yesterday, but he did it because it was there. Zamir White got involved, the rookie in the running attack for the Raiders. I just look at this Broncos, and I don't trust this team. I don't trust the Broncos like I don't trust the Colts. Colts lose to the Titans. They're 1-2-1. Matt Ryan looks 37. That offensive line looks 39. And Jonathan Taylor looks frustrated because he's hit by the time he receives the ball, every time he rushes it. Not to mention you lose Shaq Leonard to a concussion in his first game of the season. And Michael Pittman Jr. is the only guy in the football field that can make a difference on offense. Matt Ryan can throw touchdown passes to Mo Alley Cox or big tight ends, but other than in the red area, it's Michael Pittman or bust. Naheem Hines even came out after the game yesterday and said he's tired of every year there's a new starting quarterback, so you have to reset. Taking a shot at his current quarterback and at management for the way that they decided to build this team. Do I think he's wrong? Not necessarily, but you don't say it. You don't say it. But all I know is the Broncos have the same record as the Seattle Seahawks. The Broncos, they're perplexing. They are. Not to mention, we learned today that Javonte Williams, their star running back, tore his ACL. He's done for the season. Their offensive line is starting to get beat up in Denver. Vegas was winless. You go to Vegas, yes, you're on the road, but that's a game that you could win. That would be a statement win because, believe me, beating San Francisco on a Sunday night, an 11-10 win in that awful eyesore of a game was not a statement victory. Just wasn't. It was one of the worst football games I've ever seen. And I've watched a lot of football games. Would have been a big statement to beat Vegas, but Vegas gets their first win. Josh McDaniels' first win as a head coach comes against Nathaniel Hackett and the Denver Broncos. To think that you would rely on Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett more than Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes is just asinine to me. That was the take. That was the opinion that these two buffoons could do better things than Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Now, I'll tell you what the pressure point is. The Broncos are at home Thursday night, short week, to a battered Colts team. It's just a recommendation for the Broncos. Win that game. Win that game. Because you lose to the Colts, who are 1-2-1, who somehow beat the Chiefs. Matt Ryan, who's old as hell. The Colts could implode. I mean, if the Colts start 1-4-1 or 1-3-1, I apologize. Frank Reich could be fired. He could be the first coach fired this year. Because, yes, he's had a different starting quarterback every year, but this is his 5th year with the Colts as the head coach. And they've had very little to no success. And if they weren't in the AFC South, they wouldn't be still in the divisional hunt, but they are. Tennessee's 2-2. They've won 2 in a row against the Colts and against the Raiders. 2 decently impressive wins of the amount of times they lose a game. Jacksonville's 2-2. Jacksonville had a tough game yesterday. Didn't even cover the number. Fuck's sakes. Trevor Lawrence had four turnovers, interception, and 3 fumbles. That's the reason you lose the game. Sloppy conditions in Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts only turned the ball over once. It was a pick 6. Happened in the first quarter, but he rebounded after that. He only threw 206 yards passing, but they had 4 rushing touchdowns yesterday. Jalen, Kenneth Gainwell, Miles Sanders ran for 2. Philadelphia can beat you any way you want to play. In the air, on the ground, they got receivers. Devontae Smith had over 200 yards receiving in 2 games. He only had 17 yesterday. There are going to be games like this where he's not that involved because of the conditions and just the way they need to beat that specific team. Key for the Eagles is that offensive line staying healthy. Jordan Mailata left the game yesterday. He was trying to warm up. He looked okay to me. We'll see how he is this week. But the Eagles, they beat a good team in the Jags. You get by a tough test, you're 4-0, the only unbeaten team in the NFL. And I love that they can just find ways to win. Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, they just have that veteran offensive line that creates holes in the running game. And it's so dynamic because if you want to try to stop the run, okay, Jalen can pull it under his arm and he can find A.J. Brown, he can find Devontae Smith, he can find anybody down the field for a big play. So it makes this offense so creative and so hard to prep for. You're in shitty, sloppy conditions, and they still find a way to put up 4 rushing touchdowns, and they beat you to death on a good Jacksonville defense. But also kudos to Philadelphia for forcing 4 turnovers off Trevor Lawrence. Kudos to that defense for Fletcher Cox for getting a fumble recovery, for Brandon Graham for punching one out, for James Bradbury for getting an interception, his second in as many weeks. He's playing well. Giants cut him. He's found a new home in Philadelphia. Seems to be loving it. But you look around the league, and what's so fascinating is you have all these divisions. You look at the AFC East. Dolphins and Bills are 3-1. Patriots are in last place. Jets are 2-2. By the way, the Jets aren't that bad of a team. Yes, they've beaten the Steelers and the Browns, but they got some good skill, but they're in the right track. I like Breece Hall a lot at running back. Garrett Wilson's a stud at wide receiver. The Jets have some pieces. But that division, two-horse race, but it could very well be a one-horse race because we learned today, no big surprise, Tua Tagovailoa has already been ruled out for Week 5. I'll touch on that in a second. AFC North, Bengals, Browns, Ravens, all at 2-2. Then you have the Steelers at 1-3, who Kenny Pickett threw 3 interceptions yesterday and his first time on a field as an NFL quarterback. So you have a tight one there. AFC South, you have the Jags and the Titans at 2-2, followed by the Colts at 1-2-1 and the Texans 3-1. Both those teams are terrible. AFC West, you have the Chiefs at 3-1, Chargers and Broncos at 2-2, and the Raiders at 1-3. Raiders could be better, but they found ways to lose games. Now they have the Chiefs next week on Monday Night Football. Big test there. Still an interesting division. NFC East, which is normally a doormat division. Eagles are 4-0. You have the Cowboys at 3-1, and you have the fraudulent Giants at 3-1, but they're still 3-1. This division, which normally stinks, it's a battle for 9-7 with Jason Garrett when he wasn't working for NBC and he was the coach for the Cowboys. That's what they strive for. They strive to be a little above 500. Now, Eagles are undefeated, but yet they only have a game lead on both the Giants and the Cowboys. Cooper Rush is 4-0 to start his career as a quarterback in the NFL. He keeps winning games, but there is no quarterback controversy in Dallas. There still isn't one. Dak Prescott remains the great quarterback. He's doing a fantastic job, Cooper Rush. He is. You beat the Commanders. You beat the Bengals, which was an impressive win. You beat the Giants. 2 divisional wins. And last season, you beat the Vikings, which is an impressive win on the road. This is what I'll say about Cooper Rush. He's earning a contract. His contract's done at the end of this year. He's earning a good backup money for next season. Teams will want him because they know he can start. I think the Cowboys will want to keep him because he knows the system and he has success in Dallas. But nevertheless, I think there could be a good bidding war for Cooper Rush to be your backup quarterback. Maybe he'll be the Chase Daniel for a team out there that's really looking for a guy that they know that can play. But there is no quarterback contract, but he is playing well, and I credit the Cowboy. I credit Cooper Rush for coming in and solidifying that offense. And, Dak Prescott said on Fox yesterday in the game, on the telecast, that he could be available for next week when they play the Rams. The Rams play tonight, Monday Night Football, in the Bay Area against San Francisco. Regardless of the outcome, I'm starting Cooper Rush next week and giving Dak Prescott an extra week of rest. Yes, you might lose to the Rams. You might win it, though. It's a tough game. Defending Super Bowl champions, Dak will want to come back to play in that game. I get it. But I'm not letting him. I'm sitting him out another week. He can return in week 6 to play against the Eagles. A divisional game on Sunday Night Football. A huge game. You got to win that game. Eagles will likely be 5-0, playing fantastic. You need to find a way to get back in the hunt. If you say you lose to the Rams, you're 3-2. You lose to the Eagles, they're 6-0. You're 3-3. You're 3 games back. You're likely not going to make that up. Could Cooper Rush beat the Rams? The way the Rams have played this season, I'm curious to watch them tonight. Yeah, he could. He could beat them because they haven't looked great so far this year. They just haven't. The Rams, they haven't clicked on offense. It's been Cooper Rush or bust. Only put up 20 points last week against Arizona. So I'm not starting Cooper. I'm not starting Dak Prescott until at least week 6 against the Philadelphia Eagles if I'm the Dallas Cowboys medical staff. I'll play it safe, unlike Miami's. NFC South, you have the Bucs 2-2. You have the Falcons 2-2. And you have Carolina and New Orleans both at 1-3. Carolina's pathetic. That offense is just so inept. New Orleans just as terrible. Andy Dalton almost came up with a win yesterday, the Red Rifle, but he ends up losing on the double doink against the Minnesota Vikings in London, England. How apropos. NFC North, you have the Packers and Vikings at 3-1. Bears are 2-2 somehow. And you have the Detroit Lions at 1-3, who are better than the Chicago Bears, but they're 1-3 because they can't stop anybody on defense. Tough sledding. And you finish with NFC West. We'll see what happens tonight with the Rams. Like I said, they got the Niners tonight, so you have the 2-1 Rams. You have the 2-2 Cardinals, 1-2 49ers, and the 2-2 Seahawks. So the Seahawks are right in the thick of it. They got Arizona next week. What a win that would be if Seattle could upset Arizona. They play each other twice in the next 5 games, 2 divisional games for Seattle and Arizona. Next week's game is in Seattle. So Seattle will have the home field when they go head-to-head with Seattle won a game in Detroit yesterday. So a big road win for Geno and the Hawks. But, it's fascinating just how close this league is, the upsets, the 10-point comebacks. No game is over. That's what you can definitively say about this league is you don't give up because anything can happen. Jeff Probst says that all the time on Survivor. Well, it's true about the NFL this year. No game is out of hand because you can find a way and claw your way back into one. Could be a fumble. Something can happen where the tide can shift and you could end up winning the game. Now, I want to address the Tua situation where Saturday we learned that the independent doctor who ruled that Tua could go back into the game against the Buffalo Bills, have been fired by the NFL Players Association. If you didn't listen to Friday's show, go back and listen to it. I had a pretty impassioned speech about this, and I talked about it a lot last week on the show about how I felt Tua shouldn't be playing. And the things on it that he shouldn't have re-entered the game. It was not safe. And his health, his safety is bigger than the sport. And that this event could spark massive change. Well, so far we've seen that doctor be fired. We're starting to see, they're not calling it the Tua rule, but you could basically put it that way. We saw Brian Hoyer leave the game yesterday. He did not pass the concussion protocol test. I'm not sure they changed the test in a week, but Tua could pass it. Brian Hoyer did not for the New England Patriots. Then looking at it more here. Tua has already been ruled out for this weekend's game against the Jets. We're on a Monday, and he's ruled out for the Sunday game. That is very early in the week. To me, that's not just for this is a lot of it is for show. But he's saying this early in the week to get ahead of it, Mike McDaniel. He's doing this to kind of set the tone. We're taking this very seriously. Tua isn't doing as well. I don't know. He definitely has a concussion. But again, this was just so poorly handled by the NFL, by the NFL Players Association. I'm glad this guy was fired. I said the NFL should be fined. They won't. But I'm glad this guy was let go because clearly to me, he didn't do his job correctly. He didn't see the signs. He let him get back into the game. And again, I blame the Miami Dolphins more than anybody because they let this guy play. They cared more about a Thursday night in Cincinnati than they did about Tua Tagovailoa's long-term health and his future as the Dolphins starting quarterback for years to come. That decision could have cost Tua millions of dollars and could have cost the Miami Dolphins years of being competitive. Because if you don't have a quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater's a good stopgap. But now you head into week 5 against the Jets. Could Zach Wilson and the Jets beat the Dolphins this week? Yes. Yes. With Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. Yes. Wouldn't surprise me. I'm curious to see the spread because you have a backup quarterback against a Jets team that just got a big win against the Steelers. Regardless if the Steelers are any good, you won the game. So now I look at the situation. You mishandle it. Now your team's in a worse spot. That's only fair. It's only fair that the team that did the dirty deed is put in a bad spot now. I'm glad about that. Because you shouldn't benefit from making poor decisions, from having a bad behavior. I hope Tua can recover. I hope to see him back on the field this year. He's already ruled out for this week. It's unknown when he'll return. I don't think he plays the following week either against the Minnesota Vikings. It's 2 weeks away, but I don't see it happening. The Dolphins didn't take a cautious approach the first time. They will now because they're forced into it. Because finally they're showing the door saying this is the way you should have handled it the first time. You screwed that up. Your player's worse off for it now, and this is what happens. Ryder and I will talk Jets-Dolphins later in the week. I'm curious to see the line. Because the Jets are at home. Dolphins have to go on the road to play a team that's really confident. Robert Saleh's got the team feeling a whole lot better about themselves. Check that line out later in the week. We'll touch on that Thursday. But what a week 4 in the NFL. It closes out tonight, as I said, Rams-Niners this evening. Should be an interesting game. Divisional game on a Monday night. Always like that. Porn star Jimmy gets his second start. Rams are still starting to find it, but for a slow start to a season, if they could be 3-1 and put their biggest rival, the Niners, at 1-3, they'll happily take that. To baseball, quickly here. Over the weekend, the New York Mets started Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, Chris Bassett. They won a combined 0 games. The Braves swept the Mets at home, and now the Bravos have a 2-game lead with 3 games left to play in this season. The Braves, who are 10 games back in July, are going to win the National League East. A second straight season with a massive comeback for the Bravos. And they will now get a bye into the NLDS and avoid the Dodgers. While the Mets will be a wild card team, and they will play the St. Louis Cardinals, who are riding a wave of positivity right now. Albert Pujols jacks out number 702 yesterday. 4 RBIs in the game. Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina, and Albert Pujols all walk off the field together. Their last home game at Busch Stadium. But they'll be there in the playoffs. They're trying to keep this dream alive to all win a World Series in the last year. St. Louis is playing good baseball. The Mets are struggling. Not to mention, if they get by the Cardinals, they're going to have to start both guys in the wild card games, meaning they likely won't have one of them for the series against the Dodgers if they were to win it. What a collapse. What a collapse by the New York Mets. You spent all that money. I said that they have a real good chance of making it. I still think the Braves or the Mets will get to the World Series of the National League. It's a tougher draw now for the Mets, but I still think one of those teams will. The Padres aren't going to win. They aren't. I'm sorry, Cardinals are going to play. The Mets will be a wild card team, and the Cardinals will play the Phillies, likely. So you'll have the Padres and the Mets. I apologize. Padres and the Mets, which is interesting in and of itself. I still think the Mets will beat the Padres. It's the Padres choke. I said they wouldn't get past the NLDS. I'll be even more confident they don't get by the wild card if they play the Mets. Other National League news. Choke job by the Mets. Also a choke job by the Milwaukee Brewers. You dropped 3 out of your 4 games, home games, to the Miami Marlins over the weekend. The Marlins, who have nothing to play for but be a spoiler. You lose 2 games in extra innings. While the Phillies, you got a break. The Phillies lost a game early in the series, but the Marlins take 3 of 4. Milwaukee, just again, a flat-out choke job. You lose to a bad Marlins team. I have no sympathy for you. You screwed the pooch. Your team stinks. You traded Josh Hader. You still could have made the playoffs, went on a run. You didn't. Phillies are a game and a half up now with 3 games to play. Phillies are going to make the playoffs for the first time since signing Bryce Harper. Rocky Thompson, credit to him. Interim manager after they fired Joe Girardi. He's going to make the postseason as an interim manager. Might earn him a contract for next year. Although, here's a prediction. If they lose in the wild card series, he won't get one. Because that's what the Phillies are playing for, just to make the playoffs, although they should be playing for that because that's all they can do right now. I'd rather play the Padres than play the Phillies. I will say that for the Cardinals. I would. I don't like the Padres at all. I don't think that team's very good. Philly's been terrible. That's why the Padres are right in front of them. There could be some movement in the last couple of days of the MLB season. I doubt there will be, though, because it's so congested right now. I'm going to touch on this more tomorrow, but news today, Cam Talbot, the Ottawa Senators starting goalie, injured. He's out 5 to 7 weeks. He's going to be able to start this a whole month of October into November. So Anton Forsberg is going to be the new starter for the time being, and Ottawa claimed Magnus Hellberg off waivers from the Seattle Kraken. Big news in Ottawa. So I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow because it's a more interesting story. I got to dive deeper into it. But the Ottawa Senators in the past 3 to 4 years have been one of the slowest starting teams in the National Hockey League. They lost 10 of their first 13 2 years ago. You cannot have that this year and make it up. Because you can't. You can't rely on good goaltending either because you have a backup goalie and a guy who was cut a week before camp ends. Well, I'm going to dive more into that story tomorrow in Ottawa. That's a devastating news for Ottawa, as they really expected Cam Talbot to be the number one guy this season. And just more preseason. Why Toronto, Montreal again tonight? Why? Toronto, Ottawa later in enough of these division games. Travel. COVID is over. Uncle Joe Biden said it. Pandemic is ending. Curtain call. It's over. Why? I don't want to see these two teams play 80 times a year. Let's move on. No, let's do it again. No, it's just boring. God. Monday Night Football tonight. Baseball games. Blue Jays could clinch home field in the wild card game with a win against the Baltimore Orioles tonight, who have nothing to play for. We'll see. We'll talk about Aaron Judge and all the cut-ins tomorrow. When Seamus joins us, we'll preview the Pacific Division, and we'll recap Monday Night Football. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody. This is To The Point.